Hi there, everybody. Welcome back for more. We've got another 1908 game for you today, and it once again is the White Sox playing against Cleveland. White Sox show up here in Cleveland. Chicago's at 5-3, and the reason why, of course, we're doing this is because they're one game out of first place, since both Boston and New York have been kind of on a spell of poor form lately in the last couple of games. It's still really early in the season, but things are shaping up a little bit differently here than they did in real life. We'll see, though, if Cleveland is able to get back into this, and that's kind of the joy of 1908. You never know what's going to happen. Fielder Jones starts it off for Chicago, rolls a 65 for a 35. That's a little foul out over to third base. Bradley's got that for the first out, and here's Ed Hahn. He rolls a 43 for a 29. That's a ground ball back to Berger, and he throws over to first for the out. 2 away. Here's Patsy Doherty. He rolls an 11 for a 2, or for a 0 rather, and then a 43 for a 7. That's a base hit for Doherty. He only gets the 7 out of that, not necessarily what you're looking for. And of course, the White Sox were still the hitless wonders back then, which is why you've got someone like George Davis hitting cleanup. Now, he did have a big game just the other day. Davis rolls an 11 for a 0. And then a 56 for an 11. And so there's a base hit for Davis, sends Doherty to third. Davis ends up on second with Parent up there with the stolen base. 2 outs now, and here is Freddie Parent. And he rolls a 66. Man, the White Sox getting all the rules today, and now at 24. 24 for a 6, and that will clear the bases as Parent ends up getting the big base hit, the big double, and having fun with double columns today is what the White Sox are doing. And just like that, it is a 2-0 game here in the top of the first inning. And you never quite know what's going to happen, of course, in these games. I've noticed recently I've had a couple of 1908 games with a bit more offense than I was expecting. So it does happen from time to time. And, man, Jiggs Donahue rolls an 11 and 55, which is a 6, and that's going to score another one, double for Donahue, and that will score Parent. 3-0 now, White Sox, and Heine Berger's not pitching well at all. Lee Tannehill up there now. He rolls a 65 for a 35, and that's a little pop-up again to Bradley, makes the out. We go to the bottom of the first, 3-0 White Sox. Here is Lajoie hitting 185, and he rolls, a 24 for a 13. So Frank Owen gets the strikeout. Here's Josh Clark. He rolls a 56 for a 34. Little E roll is going to be a 15. That's within the range, and that's going to be an error there on the first baseman, and we can blame Donahue for that one. George Stovall is now up there, rolls a 42 for a 9, which is a ground ball over to Tannehill at third base. Throws over to first for the out, 2 away. That brings up Bill Hinchman. Hinchman now rolls a 42 for a 22. That's changed to a 21, and that's going to be a single deep to first base. Donahue, again, sort of is a prey to that one, but they call that a hit instead of an error, and that sends Clark over to third. And here's Bill Bradley with 2 outs. He rolls a 44 for an 8, and that is a fly ball over to center field, and Jones has it for the out. We go to the top of the second. Here's Billy Sullivan. Sullivan rolls a 51 for a 14. There's a base on balls. First one of the game given up by Heine Berger, and that brings up Frank Owen. No need to bunt here. Owen rolls a 62 for a 12, and it looks like I'm having some issues again. Yep, I am having issues again. All right, just a sec. We got to reset this virtual machine once again. All right, we're back here. That wasn't much of a wait. Now that I know what to do, the roll was a 62. Let's see if we can get the 62 to show up. There we go. 62, which is a ground ball over to the shortstop, Paring, who flips to Lajoie for 1. On over to first to Stovall for the double play. We go over here to Fielder Jones now with 2 outs. And that bug, as I've said before, is not caused by the NP3 game. That is a bug that is caused by VirtualBox, which drives me nuts from time to time. Don't use VirtualBox. Go the open, free and open source route if you're using Linux. That brings Fielder Jones, rolls a 15 for an 11, and that's going to be a single, and then he will steal a base as Ed Hahn is up there. And, man, the White Sox, 5 hits so far in this one. Next roll for Hahn is a 41 for a 28. That's a ground ball over again to Paring, who throws over to first for the out. We go to the bottom of the first, or bottom of the second, rather. Here's Joe Birmingham, rolls a 44 for an 8, but with a little C. He gets a single, but is caught trying to steal, and that brings up George Paring. He rolls a 65 for a 35. And the roll is a 23, which is, again, in the error range, and that's another error on the first baseman. So 2 errors so far today on Donahue, and also a misplay on a single. We're only in the bottom of the second. It's going to be a long game for him. Here is Clark. He rolls a 35 for a 14, and there's a walk, and that brings up Heine Berger. And we're going to bunt. You know that we have to with 1 out. Not what we necessarily want to be doing down by 3, but there's not much of another choice, not with this guy up there. There's a little E as that rolls a 65 for a 35. That winds up being a foul out to the catcher, and the runners hold. 2 outs now for the big man. Lajoie hitting 179. He rolls a 25 for an 8, and there's a single. Scores 1, sends Clark over to third base. 3-1 is the score now, as here is the other Clark, Josh Clark, up there, and he rolls a 52 for a 27, and there's a ground ball over to third base. Tannehill makes the play, throws to first for the out. We go to the top of the third. Here's Patsy Doherty. Rolls a 61 for a 42, and he is hit by that pitch, and that brings up George Davis. Davis hitting 185. 313 is the on-base percentage, so he's getting on base, just can't hit the ball well. He rolls a 54 for a 45, and the little E rolls a 46. It's out of the range. It's a fly ball over to Hinchman in right field. He makes the play 1 away, and here is Freddie Parent. And Parent rolls a 43 for a 29, and that is a little ground ball back to Berger. He throws over to the shortstop Herring for the out at second. Parent now as the runner at first, and here's Donahue. Rolls an 11 for a 0. Next rolls a 52 for an 11, and so there's a base hit that sends Parent to third, and Donahue steals a base. And we have runners on second and third now with 2 outs for Lee Tannehill. And he rolls a 65 for a 35. It's a little pop-up over to Stovall, the first baseman, for the out. We go to the bottom of the third, and here is Stovall. He rolls a 12 for a 24, and we have another little E roll. This time it's a 34 out of the range, and so it's a ground ball over to Parent, throws over to first for the out, 1 away. Bill Hinchman now rolls a 14 for a 43, and the little E roll this time is a 22, which is within the range, and that's going to be an error on the shortstop. 3 errors so far in the White Sox. That time it was Parent making the error. Bradley up there now. Rolls a 63 for a 31. That's a little fly ball over to Jones in center field for the second out. Here's Joe Birmingham. He rolls a 51 for a 9, and that's a ground ball to the third baseman. Tannehill throws to first for the out. We go to the top of the fourth. Starting to pick up a little bit of steam here in this one. And here is Billy Sullivan, the catcher. He rolls a 34 for a 44. We do have a little E roll. It's a 26 out of the range. That's a fly ball over to Birmingham in center field for the first out. Here's Frank Owen again. He rolls a 41 for a 24. Ground ball over to shortstop Herring. Throws to first for the out, 2 away. And here is Fielder Jones now up here. Rolls an 11 for a 7, and there's a single for Jones, and that brings up Ed Hahn. Runner on first base, hit number 7 for the White Sox in this game, and they're probably going to end up setting their record for this season for the total number of hits in this one. Honda rolls a 52 for a 27. That's a ground ball over to third base. Bradley has it, throws over to second for the out. We go to the bottom of the fourth inning, and here is George Herring hitting 167. And he rolls a 63 for a 30. It's a fly ball over to left field, and Doherty has it for the first out. And that brings up Clark, and there's some lady out in front of my house. As if you don't know this, I'm looking out here at the front door, and I'm not sure what's going on here, so we'll see what's going on. We may be interrupted here for a second. Here comes the catcher, Clark, for Cleveland. He rolls a 42 for a 38, and that's going to be a ball. The next roll here is a 63 for a 31. That's a fly ball over to Jones, the center fielder, for the second out. Here is the pitcher, Heine Berger. 2 outs here, bottom of the fourth, and the roll is a 51 for a 13, and that's a strikeout. We're going to go to the top of the fifth inning here. And Doherty is going to be the first batter up here for Chicago, and his roll is a 54 for a 45, and we do have a little E roll. It's a 22 is what that little E roll gives us. And that's going to be a ground ball over to the third baseman, Bradley, who bobbles it and boots it, and Doherty is able to make it over to first base. And so that will bring up George Davis here with a runner on first base. Again, 3-1, the White Sox with the lead. Let's do a little bit of hit and run and see what happens. Take a quick look here at Doherty's card, and yep, we do have that 11, 1, 2, 3 of them there in the first column. That's when you know that you're playing with dead ball era power. And the roll here is a 52 for a 27, and that's a good hit and run ground ball over to Bradley at third base, makes the play at first, and they stay out of a potential double play. That brings up Freddie Parent, and the White Sox have 2 chances to pad their lead here. And Parent rolls a 35 for a 39, which changes to a 40, and that's a fly ball over to right field. Hinchman has it, and Doherty tags up and is able to move to third on the play. 2 outs here, and here's Donahue. And his roll is a 22 for an 8. That's a fly ball to Hinchman again in right field, and that'll do it. And we go to the bottom of the fifth inning, and here is Lajoie as the leadoff hitter, and he rolls a 35 for a 9, and that's a pop-up over to Tannehill, the third baseman, for the first out. And here comes Clark. Clark rolls a 61 for a 40, and that's going to be a foul. The next roll is a 13 here for a 14 by Clark, and he will walk, and that'll bring up George Stovall. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on. This lady's got an iPad. I'm guessing this is probably a realtor thing or something like that. So probably not much of much interest to it. We have that around here every once in a while. Stovall rolls a 62 for a 12. We do have a little E roll if we need it. And that roll is a 25, so just out of range. And that ends up being a ground ball over to the shortstop Parent. Flips over to Davis for 1 and over to Donahue for the second for a double play. And we'll go to the top of the 6th inning. So nobody coming here to say anything to me. Instead, they're just taking pictures on the iPad, not sure what's going on. Tannehill now rolls a 65 for a 35. We do have a little E, though, to worry about, as always. And this time the roll is an 11, and that ends up changing to a 18 for an error, and that's going to be the first error, I believe, on pairing. Second error of the ball game on Cleveland. I forget if their first one was also on pairing or not. I feel like it wasn't. Anyway, and here comes Billy Sullivan, the catcher, and we're going to probably bunt with him here. Yeah, the roll is a 54 for a 45. That was a good play. Bradley ends up fielding this bunt, throws over to first base to Stovall. Tannehill's able to move up to second, and here comes Frank Owen now with a 1 out. We'll go ahead and swing away with him. And the roll is a 62 for a 12, and that's a strikeout, and that's the second out. And here comes Fielder Jones now. The roll for Jones is a 62 for 12 again, and that's another strikeout, and that's strikeout number 2 there for Berger. And we'll go here to the bottom of the 6th inning. Bill Hinchman to lead this one off for Cleveland, and he rolls a 56 for a 34. And here's that little E again. The roll's a 54. It's out of the range. There's a pop-up over to Parent, the shortstop, for the first out. And here is Bill Bradley. He rolls a 63 for a 31. That's a fly ball over to center field, and it's Jones who has it. And our photographer has driven off. I think what's going on, we see this every once in a while where you get, the appraisers doing houses and stuff like that, and they got to look at what comparable houses are like here in the neighborhood. So I've seen this before. At least she had the courtesy of getting out of her car. I've seen people do sort of a almost drive-by photo taking, from their car. It always strikes me as strange, but that's what I get for having my desk right next to the window. Birmingham rolls a 66 for a 0. Here's the second dice roll, and it's a 61 for a 6, and there's a double for him. So with 2 outs here in the bottom of the 6th, Cleveland does have something going, and here's pairing, and he rolls a 31 for a 14, and that's a walk. That'll bring up the catcher, Clark, still with 2 outs, and this is a good guy to have up in this situation. And he rolls a 66 for a 0, and this game's going to get interesting. The next roll here is a 63, and that's a 6 again, and that's going to score 1 runner. But then the runner on first base, pairing, is thrown out. The relay goes from Doherty to Parent over to Sullivan for the out. And that makes this a 3-2 ball game as Cleveland just barely misses out on being able to tie the score. And I don't think there's really much that you could have done as a manager in this game to sort of prevent that from happening. I mean, you're not going to want to, play it safe with them at all in this situation. You want to try to score the run. Just a little bit of bad luck that you end up with that kind of roll in the double column. 3-2 ball game now as we go to the top of the 7th. And here is Ed Hahn, who rolls a 14 for a 43, and a little E roll is a 63. That's out of the range. It's a fly ball over to Clark in left field. 1 away, and here's Patsy Doherty. Rolls a 33 for an 8, and that's a ground ball over to shortstop Pairing. Throws to first for the out, and here's George Davis. He rolls a 65 for a 35. That's a little pop-up over to Stovall, the first baseman, and we go to the bottom of the 7th just like that. And here's Heine Berger. Rolls a 34 for a 44, and we do have a little E roll, and it's an 11, and that's going to be error number 4 of the game. That is an error on the third baseman, Tannehill. 4 errors in this ball game on the White Sox and 2 on Cleveland, and let's make something happen. So Berger is going to be on first base. Before I do this, let me take a look, and I'm kind of crazy. I'm not going to do a hit and run. We're going to just swing away with Napoleon and see what he can do. The roll is a 26 for a 27, and that's going to be a ground ball over to third base. Tannehill throws it over to Davis for 1, but they can't get the fast man, the batter, at first base, unfortunately, and so there'll be only 1 out on that one. Here comes Josh Clark. He rolls a 45 for a 14, and so Owen's control is really deserting him here. In game, he's been turned into a D, but we want to keep him out there just a little while longer as they normally would. Stovall up there rolls a 14 for a 43. That's a quiet fly ball over to Doherty for the second out here in the bottom of the 7th, and that brings up Bill Hinchman. And Hinchman rolls a 32 for a 26. There's a little pop-up over to Davis, an infield fly. That will do it. We go to the top of the 8th, and here is Freddie Parent. Here's Freddie Parent. He rolls a 32 for a 26. It's a ground ball over to Napoleon, and he throws to first for the out, one away. And here's Jiggs Donahue. He rolls a 12 for a 24. That's a ground ball over to Paring, throws to first again, two away. And here's Tannehill, and he'll roll a 36 for a 33. There is a little E-roll, and that rolls a 53 as that's out of the range. That's a little pop-up again over to Napoleon Lajoie, who makes the play. And let's see what's going on here. Well, we have another one of these problems. Just a sec. All right, here we go. We're back again. This is a problem, as I've said before, with the virtual machine software, with VirtualBox itself. I'm convinced this is not a hardware issue because I've only had it when dealing with this hardware or with this software. Bill Bradley's up there in the bottom of the eighth, and we're going to go ahead and leave this off for him. He rolls a 35 for a 42, and that pitch hits him, and that brings up Joe Birmingham. And that's kind of a important part of this game. And the question is, do I stick with Owen until the top of the ninth, or what happens? Let's see what he does. The roll here for Birmingham's a 64 for a 29. That one goes back to Owen, who makes the play over to Parent, covering second for the first out. And that brings up George Paring. And, I mean, this is where you have one of those questions, right? You could bunt. Actually, we will bunt with him here. I was going to say you could bunt with him, but it depends on who's hitting eighth. In this case, it probably is a good idea to bunt. And so his roll is a 63 for a 30, and that's a good bunt over to the left side. Tannehill has it, throws over to Davis at first for the out, two away. And it's one of those things you have to watch out for. I may do a little video on this here in a second where we talk about bunting in the Skeetersoft NPIII environment and how it's not necessarily as much of like a surefire thing as you might think. The fact that you're bunting doesn't mean that the bunt is actually going to be a sacrifice, and it's something you kind of have to watch. Here's Clark now with the chance to tie this game. And his roll is a 14 for a 43, and that's a fly ball over to center field. Jones has it for the out. Owen able to get out of that inning, and that brings up Billy Sullivan for the White Sox, the catcher. And, man, Cleveland has had a number of chances here to capitalize. Sullivan rolls a 54 for a 45, and that's a fly ball quietly over to Hinchman for the first out. Now the question is, do I leave Owen in to try to get him the complete game, or do I take him out? I think we're going to leave him in, as crazy as that sounds, and the roll for him is a 53 for a 21, and that's going to be a little pop-out, fly-out over to Stovall, the first baseman, who makes a good play on that. That's the second out, and here's Fielder Jones. He rolls a 26 for a 29. That's a comeback over to Heine Berger, throws over to first for the out, and we go to the bottom of the ninth, and we are going to have a pinch hitter come in. Terry Turner is going to be the pinch hitter here for Cleveland. And so here comes Turner, who has two plate appearances so far, hitting 500, but he hit with some power the one time he did. His roll is a 54 for a 45. There is a little E-roll again, though, and that roll is going to be a 26, just out of the range. That's a fly ball over to right field to Hahn, who makes it for the out, one away. And here comes the big man, Lajoie, hitting 194. Today he's 1 for 4. He rolls a 65 for a 35, and that is a pop-up over to Tannehill. So he ends up 1 for 5 in this game, assuming that Cleveland doesn't tie it. Clark now has 2 walks in this game and was on an air. 0 for 2 is what he's reading as. His roll is a 31 for a 9. He gets the base hit and unfortunately is caught stealing for the with the next batter coming up there. And so with that, the White Sox are able to get the win 3-2. They got all 3 runs there in that big first inning, and that was it. And that's all that she wrote. And that's sometimes that's the way that this works in 1908. You're the best that you can do is what happens at the beginning when you guys are hitting, and they were just blank the rest of the way. They did get a few base hits. 6 errors in this one, not exactly a well-played game, but we got through it, and we managed all sorts of distractions, including the strange lady looking into my house and taking pictures of stuff. So we'll see what happens there. If I disappear, you know what happened. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.